The rain fell relentlessly that evening, a rhythmic drumming on the cobblestones outside the small cottage in Westford. Inside, the air was thick with tension, the kind that suffocates, that wraps its fingers around your throat and tightens. Tonight, a life would end and love would turn to murder. The town of Westford had always been a quiet, unassuming place, until the night Emily Harper's world unraveled. She had always believed in the fairy tale. In Thomas Caldwell, she found everything she had ever dreamed of: a handsome, successful man who treated her like a queen. He was the type of man you built your future around, and Emily had done just that. But Thomas wasn't the perfect man she thought he was. Emily was blind to the darkness in his past, the things he had buried beneath the surface. What she didn't know was that his love wasn't as pure as hers. And as the weeks passed, a storm began brewing, one she couldn't have foreseen. Sarah Miller, Emily's best friend since childhood, had always been the quieter one. Unassuming but fiercely loyal. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at Thomas. It was subtle at first, a stolen glance, a slight smile that lingered too long. Emily, caught up in the whirlwind of her own blossoming romance, never noticed. But Sarah did. She saw the way Thomas touched Emily, the way he whispered sweet words that no one else heard. And slowly, silently, a seed of envy began to sprout. Sarah had always been the one to stay in the background, to watch from afar. But that was changing. It wasn't enough to be Emily's friend anymore. Sarah wanted more. She wanted Thomas. And the more Emily gushed about her perfect relationship, the more Sarah's jealousy gnawed at her insides, turning her affection into something twisted. What if she could have Thomas for herself? Tonight, she decided, would be the night. She had no intention of killing Emily at first. No, it wasn't about that. She just wanted to talk to Thomas, to make him see that they belonged together. He couldn't see it yet, but she would make him. She would make him understand. But as she arrived at Thomas's house, her hands trembling, her heart pounding, she saw something that would shatter everything. Emily was there, standing in Thomas's arms, laughing like she had no care in the world. The love in her eyes was so pure, so untainted, it sickened Sarah. She watched as Thomas leaned down to kiss Emily's forehead, and for a moment time stood still. This was supposed to be mine, Sarah thought, the rage building inside her like a pressure cooker. Her fingers clenched into fists as she took a step forward, the door creaking behind her. Emily turned, her smile faltering as she saw Sarah standing there, face pale with fury. "Sarah?" Emily asked, her voice laced with confusion. Thomas, sensing the change in the air, stepped forward. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, his tone uncertain. But Sarah didn't respond. Her mind was no longer rational. The love she had once harbored for Thomas now burned with a searing intensity, an uncontrollable rage that clouded everything. He had to choose her. He would choose her. "I don't want you here, Sarah," Emily said softly, her voice trembling. "Please leave." The word struck Sarah like a slap to the face. She felt herself retreating, the jealousy morphing into something far darker. Her pulse quickened, her breath shallow. She couldn't let it go. She couldn't walk away. Without thinking, Sarah turned, her gaze locking onto the gleaming kitchen knife on the counter. It was almost as if it called to her, its blade sharp, its presence inviting her. She gripped it tightly in her hand, the cold steel grounding her, giving her purpose. "Sarah, stop!" Thomas shouted, rushing toward her as she lunged at Emily, the knife raised high. But it was too late. The sharp edge found its mark, and Emily gasped, her eyes wide with shock as the blood poured from her side. Thomas froze, unable to process the horror unfolding before him. Emily crumpled to the ground, her life slipping away, her eyes locked on Sarah in disbelief. "Why?" she whispered, as if she couldn't understand how it had come to this. Sarah stood over her, the knife still in her hand, her breath ragged. "You took him from me," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Thomas knelt beside Emily, his hands trembling as he tried in vain to stop the bleeding. His mind raced, 1,000 thoughts colliding at once. He had never meant for it to come to this. But it was too late to undo the damage. The police arrived to find Thomas cradling Emily's lifeless body in his arms, a look of sheer disbelief etched on his face. Sarah was nowhere to be found. The aftermath was a media frenzy. The town of Westford, once a peaceful haven, was now tainted by the horror that had unfolded within its walls. Sarah was eventually found hiding in a nearby cabin, a broken woman, consumed by guilt and despair. The trial that followed was a spectacle, with Sarah pleading guilty to the murder of her best friend in a crime of passion. But even as she sat in the courtroom, the questions lingered. What had pushed her to kill Emily? Was it love, or was it something deeper, something darker that had always been lurking inside her? In the end, it didn't matter. The truth was that Sarah's obsession had destroyed not just Emily's life, but her own. And Thomas, forever haunted by the events of that fateful night, would never be able to escape the memories of the woman he had once loved, and the betrayal that had led to her untimely death. Love, when twisted by jealousy, becomes a weapon. And when betrayal enters the equation, it is capable of unimaginable destruction.